My parents sold something that belonged to my child. Not a toy, not something replaceable. They sold the one thing my daughter loved more than anything in the world, and they spent the money building a swimming pool for my sister. Yeah, you heard that right. And the wildest part? They thought they were going to get away with it. But 3 days after they finished celebrating that pool, a certified legal letter showed up in their mailbox. And when my father opened it, the color drained right out of his face. My name is Diana. I'm 34 years old. I work as a paralegal. I'm a single mom. And this is the story of how my parents stole from my 10-year-old daughter and how a 91-year-old woman proved that paperwork hits a whole lot harder than shouting. Before we dive in, real quick, if stories about family betrayal, justice, and people finally standing up for their kids hit you in the heart, go ahead and like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support means everything. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from. All right, let's rewind to last September, back when everything in my life still looked normal. Our apartment wasn't fancy, not even close. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a tiny kitchen where the window always stuck halfway open. The kind of place where every piece of furniture had a backstory that started with, it was on sale. But the apartment had something more important than nice furniture. It had music. Every afternoon at exactly 4:15, my daughter Lucy would sit by the window in her room and open the case of the most precious thing she owned, her cello. She named it Harriet. And to Lucy, Harriet wasn't just an instrument. Harriet was a friend. The cello had been given to her by my grandmother Eleanor when Lucy was 7 years old at her very first recital. It was an antique, built in Germany in 1923 by a maker named Heinrich Müller. If you ran your finger along the top of the instrument, you could feel a faint repaired crack in the wood from decades ago. My grandmother used to say that scar was proof the cello had survived a lifetime of music. Eleanor had played that same cello on stage at Carnegie Hall back in 1958. She'd taken it across the country, through 2 marriages, through 60 years of performances. And then one day she handed it to Lucy like she was passing down a family secret. "This cello is worth more than a car," she told me quietly after the recital. "But the real value is that it remembers every place it's ever played." Lucy believed that. Every morning she opened the case and whispered, "Good morning, Harriet." And every afternoon our little apartment filled with music. That was the thing my parents never understood. To them, that cello was money sitting in a bedroom. To Lucy, it was part of her heart. Sunday dinners at my parents' house were always a performance. My father Gerald sat at the head of the table like a king holding court. My mother Pamela floated around the kitchen smiling politely and refilling glasses like she was hosting a dinner party for royalty. My younger sister Kristen always arrived late with her twin boys, 2 loud, chaotic 7-year-olds who could knock over a lamp and nobody would say a word. But Lucy sat in a folding chair at the end of the table. A folding chair. I asked more than once if we could bring out a real seat. My mother just waved her hand. "We only have 6 chairs, Diana. Don't make things difficult." 3 weeks before everything exploded, we were sitting there eating dinner when Kristen started complaining. "The boys are bored all the time," she said. "Every house on our street has a pool except ours." My mom nodded like this was some kind of humanitarian crisis. "You're right, honey. Kids need outdoor activities." Lucy quietly said from her folding chair, "Grandpa, I have a recital next month. I'm playing the Elgar piece." My father didn't even look up. "Why don't you try a sport like your cousins?" Lucy went quiet. And I did what I always did. I changed the subject. I didn't realize that under the table, Kristen was texting someone. I only saw a flash of the screen. 2 words. Pool contractor. I didn't think about it again. Not until later. 2 weeks later, I had to fly to Seattle for work. 3 days. Just a routine legal case. Lucy was attending a music camp that same week, so Harriet stayed safely at home in her room. The morning I left, my mom called. "Let me hold on to the spare key while you're gone," she said sweetly, "just in case of emergencies." I handed it over without thinking. That was my first mistake. When I came home Thursday afternoon, the first thing I noticed was Lucy's bedroom door. The lock had been changed. Brand new deadbolt. My stomach dropped. I opened the door. The cello case was sitting in the corner exactly where it always was. But something felt wrong. Too light, too empty. I knelt down and unzipped it. Inside, nothing. Just the velvet lining shaped like a ghost where Harriet used to rest. The bow was gone. The rosin cloth was gone. Everything. I called my mom immediately. "Where is Lucy's cello?" "Oh, honey," she said lightly. "Your father took it to be repaired." "Which shop?" "I don't remember the name." That was lie number 1. The next day, Lucy came home from camp. She ran to her room, smiling, and opened the case. Then she froze. She looked at me and asked quietly, "Mom, where's Harriet?" I promised her I'd find out. 2 days later, I drove past my sister's house. And that's when I saw it.
A giant hole in her backyard. Construction equipment everywhere. Men pouring concrete. A swimming pool. Kristen was standing there taking selfies with the construction behind her like she'd just won the lottery. I walked straight up to her. "Who's paying for this?" She shrugged. "Mom and Dad. Early Christmas gift." "How much?" "I don't know, like 100,000 or something." 100,000. My daughter's cello had just vanished, and suddenly my sister had a pool. When I called my father, he didn't even deny it. "The cello was a family asset," he said flatly. "I sold it." My hands started shaking. "That cello belonged to Lucy." "Your grandmother is 91, he said. "She doesn't remember what she signed." And then he hung up. But my father forgot something important. I'm a paralegal, and paperwork is my whole life. The gift letter Eleanor signed when she gave Lucy the cello had been notarized, scanned, stored, backed up. And that's when I called my grandmother. She listened to the entire story without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled. That calm, dangerous smile only people with decades of experience have. "Diana," she said, "that cello is listed in my trust." 3 days later, my parents received a certified letter. Inside was a legal demand for the return of $17,000. And a second document, a 30-day eviction notice. Because the house my parents had been living in for 25 years, it wasn't theirs. It belonged to my grandmother's trust. My father had never even checked the deed. The courtroom hearing took less than an hour. The judge looked at the notarized gift letter, the bank records, the email my sister sent telling my mom to sell the cello before I came home. Then she looked at my father and asked one simple question. "Did you have permission to sell the instrument?" Silence. That was all the judge needed. The ruling was immediate. Full restitution of $17,000, wage garnishment if necessary, and eviction from the property within 30 days. My father sat there staring at the table like the floor had just collapsed beneath him. My mother cried quietly into a tissue. My grandmother squeezed my hand. And just like that, the truth had won. A month later, Harriet came home. Lucy opened the case slowly. She touched the strings. Then she whispered the same words she always had. "Hi, Harriet." That night she played the Elgar Concerto in our living room. And for the first time in months, the apartment felt like home again. 3 months later, Lucy performed that same piece on stage with the youth orchestra. My grandmother sat beside me in the audience. When the final note faded, the entire hall stood up cheering. Lucy bowed and smiled the biggest smile I've ever seen. My grandmother leaned over and whispered, "Music remembers everything." She was right. Because some people think power comes from yelling louder. But sometimes, the quietest weapon in the room is a signed document. If you made it all the way to the end of this story, thank you for listening. If this reminded you that protecting your child is never wrong, hit the like button and subscribe. And remember something important. Family isn't the people who demand your loyalty. Family is the people who protect your children. See you in the next story.